Get started. Thank you. Yes, sir. So first of all, this meeting is being recorded. So if you're not okay with that, you can turn off your camera, go anonymous, change your name um, for that. Um, So everyone is welcome here. That's the first thing. Welcome, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, disability. So you're all welcome. And make sure you're making space for other people in the space as well. When we're talking about things, make sure you're critiquing ideas, not people, and give people, assume they have positive intentions. And of course, participation is what it is for you. So make sure you're comfortable at that. We will always have a quiet room for the breakout rooms. And do please take time to describe visuals, make your work accessible. We do have a few more things from the community agreements. Closed captions are available. You can turn them on yourself. Yeah, if you're okay with the recording, that's great. If not, you can rename yourself. You are welcome to have your camera and mic on or off. If you need any kind of support, please message me privately or Yasser for that. Yep, thank you. And I'm going to put the link if you want to contribute to our community agreements. You can find the full agreements here. And we also have, I'll put the Discord channel information in the chat as well. I will switch over here to next presentation, and let's go with that. And we should be, is everyone seeing that? Oops.
Yes, thanks, Jenny.
You okay with that? Yeah. So shall I launch into it? Are we ready?
Yes, go ahead, Nick.
Are you okay? Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you to Maha, to Yasser, and to Jenny for all your support before the session and during the session. And it's wonderful to be with you, Maha, especially to reunite with you after about 25 years, a quarter of a century of collaboration and contact and so on. As I said before this thing started, you know, we felt on the course team back then that you were already highly engaged, highly motivated, and you know, you taught us as much as anything that you may have learned from it. And you've gone on to become world famous as well, which is a testimony to that earlier view. So thank you very much for inviting me today. And this session is really looking at a proposition, an idea, a theory of learning with AI called iterationism. And it's focused on cognitive effort. And so we'll explore that. And I'm going to also introduce this related concept, almost the role of AI in this idea of iterationism, that will be AI as an archivist, and particularly for co-learning. But these two concepts, if you like, of iterationism focused on cognitive effort, particularly with the capabilities of AI, and AI as an archivist. And so for this session then, could you please set up 3 tabs in your browser if you can, if it's safe to do it. Hands, you know, if you're driving, maybe skip this bit. But the Zoom in one browser, the Chat GPT in another, and this shared Google Doc, bit.ly iteration stroke iterationism. Okay. So that's our learning environment. So we'll go on from there if we may and look at the menu. I'm going to talk about this theory that I'm proposing or introducing here. Something that came out, my background, as Maha will know, has always been collaborative and networked learning, an interest in the possibilities of being networked. And part of that was then applied as soon as ChatGPT came out. I was interested not so much in what it could do generally, but what it might do for collaborative learning and that kind of thing, online and in the classroom, and AI as an archivist. So I'll talk about that for 10 minutes. And if you can cope with that, then the rest of it will be hopefully a more engaged session and one in which these concepts will become meaningful, hopefully. Okay, so that's the idea of the thing. And then at the end, just to make it more concrete, possibly, I'll give you 3 examples from our current practice that will illustrate this idea of iterationism and AI as an archivist in practice. And at the end, there's time for any questions, and we'll close there. Okay, so that's the structure, and we'll see how we go. So as I've mentioned, iterationism is a theory of learning with AI, learning and teaching with AI, focused on cognitive effort. Now, cognitive effort is a feature of every learning theory, pretty much. You know, it's hard to imagine that you could have a theory of learning and thinking that didn't incorporate or look at or imply cognitive effort. However, we're making it the focus and we're arguing that iterationism gives it new qualities and new possibilities. So with constructivism, for example, that also has this cognitive effort as a central part of it. The idea that you would attend new experience and process it through cognitive effort to achieve internal structural change. You'd add to existing boxes, if you like, cognitive boxes, or you'd create new boxes as a consequence. But the aim there, the principal aim of that theory, is not only to describe how knowledge is developed, but also to describe how you rebalance after being unsettled, perhaps, from an initial experience that causes you some disquiet. Iterationism, on the other hand, is focused specifically on the ability of AI to capture and work with the cognitive effort and do that for learning, teaching, and research. So if we could go on then, I'll just say a little bit about the artifact side of it. So AI as an archivist, again, other theories of learning are also interested and referencing archival qualities, archival issues. So in constructionism with Papert, for example, there's this idea of using technology to externalize and represent our internal thinking and to create that as a shareable resource for conversation. Okay, to create objects to think with. And we can think about these objects, these public entities, as artifacts themselves. But with iterationism and AI, the argument is that it's not only objects to think with, but the objects themselves contain a train of thought, not just a static moment, but the sequence and train of thought. That we're effectively objectifying the thinking process and creating a record of the dialogue. And Vygotsky also talks about cultural artifacts. So talking about these artifacts, which can be located in an archival context, perhaps, of these artifacts of mediated by tools, by language, by people. And we can look at these archives and these artifacts with AI. And it's particularly interesting because not only does it capture the representation of our thoughts, but all the discussants involved as well. So if you like, you get the whole discussion, you get the questions and the response, and you get that over a sequence of time. So it's an attempt to explore that as part of this focus on cognitive effort as represented by the nature and quality of the interaction and discourse with the technology, or facilitated by the technology with other people, and visualized perhaps in the transcripts of a Zoom call, for example. It's also a way of getting beyond this discourse of AI types, generative and algorithmic technologies. So they, if you like, come out of computing discourse and dialogue. And it's an attempt to say, well, what happens if we not necessarily leave it behind, but add in perhaps this idea of the archive of learning and the artifact of learning within an AI-based environment that can capture the whole interaction, and that could notionally look then at cognitive effort, both at the individual level and the collective level. So this also gives us another opportunity to explore the nature of dialogue, particularly when you think about communities of practice, for example, and that apprenticeship idea of becoming a member of a community. We could explore the way in which that dialogue unfolds, not only in isolation and not only representing our own thinking, but we could explore the dialogue with the community through the AI or with the AI in personas or whatever. Okay, so that's the broad idea that the AI allows us to focus on cognitive effort and to explore that as a theory of learning and teaching that allows different aspects and activities. So that is, if you like, my potted introduction to the session. And I'm hoping now to make this more meaningful through the activities that we're about to do now. But I'm happy to answer and pause there if you'd like to ask any questions already. I don't want this to be, just a didactic session or whatever. Okay, well, shall we go into the activities then? And we'll just see, hopefully it'll become clearer as we go on. And at any time, feel free to raise any questions, and hopefully this will become more meaningful. Okay, so could we go to the next slide, please? So in the activity, the structure will be that we look initially at scenario-based learning with AI and then progress into inquiry-based learning. So scenarios, these situations that we might explore, and this inquiry, this open-ended investigation with what-if questions and so on, that can possibly take on different qualities and different properties with AI. Next slide, please. So to begin with, I'm going to invite you to do this prompt, which you can access in the bit.ly shared document. But on your way to doing that, and before you do that, really the question that I'm inviting you to consider as you do this activity is, what is a scenario and how does AI change that? Okay, so that's our sort of launch point. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes now. You can copy and paste it from the shared Google document into ChatGPT if you like, or you can type it from there if you want. Just take 5 minutes to explore that with that question in mind, if you would. So back in 5 minutes. Could we just go back? That's it. Yeah, we just keep it at that. in some respect. Ah, right. Yes, so some of you may have done this activity already before, this kind of thing. It may not be new at all. And I'm really just using this to set the scene for what's to follow. But on our way to that, it's worth pausing to just think from that activity. What are your thoughts, perhaps, on what a scenario is, or could be with AI? What's your sort of initial evaluation of a scenario this way, perhaps? You can speak it, type it, or whatever you feel comfortable doing. Any thoughts at all? Ah, well, it was not contextual. I mean, obviously, I'm not exactly sure what you ended up. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, specific. Yes. Well, I mean, of course, you could certainly specify it, couldn't you? You could specify this river, not that river, or not generic river. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So a scenario could be something generic, or it could be. And I think what you're implicitly pointing to there, Maha, is this fact that the scenario is no longer a static thing. It's no longer a handout or something that you're given. That it is a dynamic thing. That it's something we can interact and talk with as one thing. It's something that we can particularize, make specific to our context, definitely, but also hopefully it generated those attributes and values as part of it. And really, what I want to sort of highlight here, initially at least, is that this is perhaps on the next slide, if that's possible, that we're really now into system level thinking, because accompanying that scenario, you have those, I hope you got at least, attributes and values. Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of something that we'll come to in this session, actually, David. Yeah, as a learning activity, you can ask them to alter the output. One of the examples at the end, which I can sort of cover now, if you like, on our way to that, is that we give them generic learning designs, and we ask them to localize it into their context. So just as here I've given you a generic river, this is for teacher education that I'm talking about there. But here we're giving you a generic river, and you could say, make it a river near me, a river in Thailand, a river in the Nile specifically, the Allegheny, if it's in Pittsburgh or whatever it happens to be, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely that could be, and we'll come on to that. Again, we'll revisit that. But particularly with this, we do get a context and a framework of some sort, and we can change that and develop that: science, arts, a history event, a classroom situation, this sort of thing. Different situations, we can generate them quite easily. So we could each notionally generate our own um, scenario and pull the scenarios and do compare and contrast with the scenarios themselves. But particularly just for this session, this activity, I want to highlight this system level thinking. That's what I want you to hold on to, perhaps, as we go on. But these are very much designable, and we can do differentiation and so on. But this framework that we've created of these attributes and these values that hopefully came with your when you did that prompt, not only creates a base and scaffolds us to work forward, but we're now starting to think not just about the scenario of a healthy river as a description and as a starting point, but rather that we're starting to think about the river as a system with those particular attributes, any of which can be edited, changed with the prompt or whatever. So it's this system level thing that I want you to hold on to, if you would. All right. So could we have the next slide, please? So what I want you to do now, with your consent, is to think about introducing an aspect of change. You've set up the river, you've set up the healthy river with its attributes and its values. It's a 2-sentence prompt at the bottom, and I want you to identify something that would change, that would impact the river, for one thing, and then to quantify it in some way. So it could be something that affects the river over time. That could be like a drought, climate change, of some aspect of climate change, or perhaps pollution was introduced. And where I've got now had this change, no rain for 6 months, you could have had now had this change, pollution from a factory 1 hour a day, every day for a year, or whatever it is that you come up with. All right. So what I'd like you to do is just spend a minute or two to think about an aspect of change that you'd like to introduce to your river environment, your river system that we've created. All right. And to try and quantify it in some way, the amount of change. So it's now add this change, then whatever the change is, full stop. Make a table showing them side by side so I can compare for effects on the same characteristics. Okay, so I'll just repeat that. It's 2 sentences. Now add this change, semicolon, no rain for 6 months, if that's what you chose, full stop. That's your first sentence. Make a table showing them side by side so I can compare for effects on the same characteristic. Okay. And just spend 5 minutes now having a go with that and just seeing how that works out, and have a think about what the impact and implications are and the possibilities for your practice, perhaps. Okay, 5 minutes. Oh, yeah, great. So now you've had a go introducing an aspect of change into our system, our river system. This is what I want you to keep in mind all the time, not just a scenario, but we're working now with a system and we've introduced some change into it. So now, would you go into breakout groups and just sort of explore the implications or possible applications of that in your context? Just, what are your general impressions so far of that kind of activity, the idea of generating the system view of a river and then introducing some aspect of change? So if we go now into the breakout groups for 10 minutes and we'll come back at 1:45, if we may.
Yeah, so did you have the breakout rooms preset, or do I need to do
Yeah,
something? Okay,
I'm
okay,
opening them at
perfect.
the moment.
And we will have a quiet room,
For sure.
so
Everybody back. Okay, that's great. Well, I hope that was a useful chance to have a conversation, to meet each other, and to reflect on the implications. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share about I'll just close this bit here. I've just got some windows. You know, what your thoughts are about that kind of activity, about having these scenarios, having these systems, and then introducing change. You know, what were your impressions, your thoughts about potential, that kind of thing? If there are any, don't feel under pressure to come up with something. You may feel either uncomfortable or to do that, or just uncertain. That's fine as well. Yeah, Maha.
So David and I talked about several things, and in the process of our discussion, I realized something that might be useful here. So I was talking about
Hmm?
two things. One of them is I'm always concerned about AI tools just making things up. So if I was using this for education, especially if it's like more advanced content rather than maybe K to 12, I would actually
Yes,
maybe give it some data or some article or something to base its work on or sort of guide it a little
yes.
bit. And then the other thing that I wanted to share, but my chat isn't, I'm on my phone and the chat won't open for me.
Oh,
I wanted to
right.
share a
Yeah.
blog post of one time, and if somebody knows the link to my blog, can you just put it in and then people will be able to find the particular blog post? There's a blog post where in the middle of class, I was trying to create something that was just text-based, but I used the word generate, and it was on po.com,
Uh-huh.
and it generated an interactive simulation game type of
Oh,
thing that
yeah.
actually works with buttons and everything. It just created the code and it ran
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you, David. Yes, David saved it from our conversation. Yeah, so I thought like for this kind of thing to create it that it prompts the user to move on or to choose something could be useful for others. Yeah, and then David shows
definitely.
one of the ones I created that way. Not exactly like this, but some direction that one can take from something.
Yeah, I think there's a number of points in that, isn't there, Maha? You know, one is that idea of adding a document, so everybody could add a document, the same document, to use as base knowledge for the AI to then work with in a more focused and more reduced risk way, as you say. Yeah, definitely. So I think that's something. And I think also that idea about the different artifacts that you might generate as part of it, different representations of the system, or representations of different parts of the system would be another thing. And that could be what you might call temporary software, or ad hoc software for this purpose, you know, that you might then discard. And that could be interactive software, as you say. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's more than uh, within the capability of the system, as you've demonstrated there. You know, so yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Um, yeah, there's lots in that. Could we go to the next slide, please? So just to sort of build upon that, Maha, and to you know, think about what we've been doing. There are different things, as you've said, you know, we could generate software from it and different representations of that sort for ourselves and for other people, because there's a shareable, you know, that idea of temporary software, as you say, um, or prototyping software, if you like. Um, and you could work with that variable and adjust the quantity. So you might say reduce the rainfall by half, rather than stopping it completely, rather than no rain. And you could equally say change the frequency of the rain, or the pollution twice a week instead of every day, and look at the impact on the system. This is really the key point, that it allows us to interact with the system and to understand then how something done here impacts on that aspect there. we can start to think about working with the system and understanding system level changes. And so we can then ask these what if questions in all kinds of ways, and we can explore wider possibilities. So let's do that now as part of the next thing. So could we have the next slide? So in this activity, we're going to look at this, develop this a little bit further now with your consent. So I'm going to invite you this time to come up with your own prompt in a particular area. I've identified 3 possible areas here. So it could be a change to our river system to do with people. And that could be more people using it for different purposes, for fishing. It could be transport. We're introducing ferry boats or something. Some kind of business has started up in or around the river. Perhaps farming or cafes or leisure facilities, that kind of thing. People have started swimming and fishing in the river, perhaps, that sort of stuff. It could be that you're going to introduce some structures into the river. That could be a dam, it could be drainage systems, it could be a jetty, or it could be a marina perhaps, and think about that. Or it could be that you're going to do something to do with nature, something to do with introducing new animal species or a new type of plant, bushes of some sort, some vegetation or other. Okay. So I want you to identify something that's within one of these 3 categories, if you would, and to introduce your change into the thing just as you did before. But this time we want to go further. This time I want you to work with it and understand the changes to the system reflected in that table, if you like, and to work out the best compromise. Okay, so this is the key thing now, that we're going to introduce things that we know are going to have, some sort of effect, and it will have positives. If you decide that we're going to start leisure businesses, that will have a positive effect. People will enjoy themselves. Perhaps it's a business and you'll earn some income, all those kinds of things. But it will have detrimental aspects. It will have downside for participants, for the river system as well. So the issue is not just to introduce change and see what happens. That's what we did in the last activity. What we're going to do here instead is to try and work with it to find the most acceptable compromise. So if I was going to introduce, let's say I was going to introduce boats, and I thought to myself, right, I'm going to have 100 leisure boat licenses given to run around on the river, to drive around on the river. And I may see that has these effects on those characteristics that may cause me to say, well, maybe 100's too many then. I better try 20. 20, oh yeah, that seems like it's acceptable. There is some harm, but there's enough gains. I want to do my business and set up this transport and leisure activity. Okay. So it's not just in this case a case of introducing a change for the sake of it. It's rather working with it to find the best compromise. So we're working with that system dynamically, if you like. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to identify something, introduce it, and then work with it to find what you feel is an acceptable compromise across those different variables. Okay. I'll give you 10 minutes to just have a go with it anyway. See how you get on. So, okay, can you all hear me now? Everybody here?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, that's great. Okay, could we go to the next slide, please? So what I'd like you to do, if you would now, is to copy a link to your discussion thread in ChatGPT. So in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a button that says share. And when you click on that button, it'll generate a pop-up box, and you have to click also, check the box that says make it discoverable, and then click copy link. If you don't click the make it discoverable, it doesn't actually work. Okay, and then can you go to the shared document, bit.ly/iterationism, please, and you should see there that I've updated that document for the 3 categories. So whichever category you looked at, could you paste your link under that heading? It'll be people, buildings and nature or something. People, structures and nature. So you should have right permission for that document, hopefully. And your link that you paste should have the word share in it. If it doesn't, it means that you didn't click on the you didn't check the box to say make it discoverable. So in the link, it should say chatgpt.com/share and then a lot of numbers and letters. If it doesn't, it won't be discoverable or accessible rather. Okay, we're getting a few there. That's great. So, could we have the next slide, please? So what I'd like you to do now, if you would, is go and have a look at one that isn't your own. Go and have a look at one of those threads that isn't your own. When you get a pop-up, Susan, if you click on first of all, if you click share in the top right-hand corner, it should cause a pop-up box to appear. And in that pop-up box, just above that link address that it generates, there's a little checkbox that says make this discoverable or something, and if you click on that and then click copy link button, it will then should then be shareable.
So I just want to say that I found it somewhere else. You know where it
Oh
keeps your
right, oh
chat
maybe it's
history? Where it keeps your chat history? This is on the phone because she might be in the same space as me. If you're on your phone or
I
iPad,
see.
where it has the list of all your chats, there's 3 little dots, and if you hover over there, there's an option to share, and then it'll tell you create link, and then you can copy it from there.
Oh,
Because
thank
on
you.
a
Thank you.
laptop, on a regular computer, it's what you were describing, Nick, that I wasn't seeing.
I see. I see. Apologies for that, and thank you, Maha. That's great. So, would you spend maybe 5 minutes again? We're just going to run a little bit over, but I'll be quick for what follows. Spend 5 minutes, look at one that you didn't have yourself, and just appraise it. Just see if you how reasonable you felt the compromise is, and just put a little bit of feedback in. Have a look at what their interaction, and just see about the nature and quality of the interaction. Did they put much effort into it, if you like? How much cognitive effort is there? But more particularly as well, to say whether you thought the compromise was okay. Just spend 5 minutes with that. We'll just run over, if it's okay with everybody, we'll just run over another 5 minutes after that and we'll be done. Um, we'll we'll move on from here, but you get the idea that given more time, you could explore this in many ways. Could we have the next slide, please? So really, the idea is that we're thinking now about this systems level thinking, that we're not only just modeling change that we introduce, a single change, but that we're going on from there to explore changes across these characteristics and these values to reach a compromise solution. And you can imagine doing this as groups. So you could set a group to do nature, a group to do structures, and a group to do the other one, people. There's all kinds of different ways of doing that, but there's no right answer. So it's an open-ended inquiry now that we're able to do with AI, and also that we've archived the discussion in this session. The AI has archived each individual session and allowed us to share that and compile it to collectively. And if you think about a community of practice, we could explore how the community has talked about this issue together, and then explore that further as part of the apprenticeship, as it were. So could we go to the next slide and the one after, please? So I'm just going to give you 3 quick examples from our practice to sort of try and further reinforce or supplement what I've said already. So one thing that we've hit on in this session already, early on, about the generic river and a local river, is the idea that for these students who were, teachers, we gave them a generic learning activity. We had them do the activity, and then we had them use the AI to iterate, to first of all describe what they thought the activity was all about, what the principles were in that activity, and then to iterate that, work with it into their own practice. So they're working to, first of all, articulate those principles and then to work with them. And we can explore that in the same way that we have just now with the activity that we did a moment ago. Because the university, in our case, won't allow anything to be submitted containing AI, this can only be done as a course activity, but you could imagine that it could be assessed. Next slide, please. One of the other things we did, we have the students have a session with the AI, have a discussion on a particular issue, whatever that may be, and then create a screencast to reflect on that discussion. In other words, to reflect on their own cognitive effort, their own dialogue. And taking a critical incident approach, they would then highlight particular prompts and talk about their intention with this prompt, how it met their expectation in the output, or how something different happened, what their reaction was, both to that response and then that prompted their next prompt, if you like, that caused them to design their next prompt differently. So they're using the video of the archived discussion there to reflect on their cognitive effort. Next, please. And the last one I'm doing a conference presentation next week, actually in Manchester, is on reciprocal peer assessment. So in this one, the students were paired, they were put in pairs, and each had to set a problem, a challenge for their partner. They had to go away and solve that challenge with AI and come back with a solution and the discussion thread. And the partner then evaluated their solution, said whether it was acceptable, good enough, etc., and also to grade their cognitive effort with a rubric given for that purpose. Okay, so it's literally, this is peers looking at the cognitive effort of their partner and going beyond that, in fact, and assessing it. So, you know, different ways of working with this cognitive effort, using that as a focus, and because it's the archive possibilities. Next slide, we're nearly there now. So it's to talk about a move perhaps from prompt libraries as one archive and a very useful one to have, to thread libraries, perhaps. You know, we've got this in the document that we shared. We've got individual threads and we've got the collective threads, and those become potential resources for further work, further discussion, further consideration, now in the classroom or in the future, or relative to other groups and their outputs and conversations. And we've created these generic artifacts that can be worked with in the ways that I've just described. Okay, next slide, please. So in culmination, in this session today, we've really moved into this idea of an open-ended, system-level way of thinking, learning, teaching, and researching. And the outcome of that, the shift, is then this look at cognitive effort to understand the principles, theories, designs, and so on. We're looking at meta-level thinking now. We're able to move to that system level to understand change, the system as a whole, to understand and make ourselves more aware of the system, because we're able to generate them and manipulate them quite easily. Critical thinking, because you're not just evaluating the response, you're evaluating the change to the system there. The possibility that I've pointed to earlier of discourse analysis to understand how we talk versus how they talk, another group, another culture, another time, whatever it might be, another community, all sorts of possibilities, or as just part of our attempt to become a member of a community and to inhabit and grow and belong in that community as a way of understanding how do we talk about this issue? How does the science world talk about this issue? How does the arts world talk about this issue? We are apprentices in that community, whatever level, wherever we are in our learning careers, as it were. And this idea that we're modeling system changes. So that's the sum of it. If they could go to the last slide now, just to say thank you very much. That's the most recent article that's on the slide there to do with iterationism. Thank you for your time and for inviting me today. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm happy to do that now or to do it via email. You're welcome to email me, or any other way you like, via Maha perhaps, or anything you like. But thank you very much for your participation. It was a bit hurried as we went through, obviously, these different stages. You could spend more time on each of them, but I hope at least it gave you that kind of awareness of iterationism as a theory, of an alternative to generative and algorithmic discourse in archival discourse, and some of the possibilities there for system level thinking. So thank you very much.
And thank you. I did post the link to the feedback. If people have a chance, that would be greatly appreciated.